Attention. A state of emergency has been declared for the greater metropolitan area. Do not attempt to travel.
The scratching began subtly. A faint rasp against your window, barely audible above the relentless static of the emergency broadcast. Then a thump, wet and heavy, followed by a guttural moan that scraped at the very edge of human sound. You knew, instantly, that the world outside was no longer yours. Subscribe to Think What If for more stories that push your imagination to the edge. It wasn't the mindless shambling that terrified the experts. It was the chilling coordination, the way they moved as one, a grotesque tide of flesh and hunger. How did they know where you were hiding? How did they anticipate your every desperate move, surrounding your barricaded haven with an impossible precision? The answer, more terrifying than any fanged monster, lies in the chilling whisper of a hive mind. Imagine a single, unseen intelligence pulling the strings of every infected body. Not a conscious mind, perhaps, but a biological network, a distributed processing unit of primal instinct. We've seen glimmers of this in the natural world, in the terrifying elegance of ant colonies, the synchronized horror of locust swarms. What if a pathogen could hijack this ancient programming, transforming individual hosts into mere extensions of a collective will? The idea is not science fiction. Consider Toxoplasma gondii, a parasitic protozoan that infects rats and mice. It doesn't just reside in its host, it rewires their brains. Infected rodents lose their innate fear of cat urine, becoming strangely attracted to it, a suicidal impulse that ensures the parasite completes its life cycle inside the cat. It's a puppet master in the truest sense, subtly altering behavior for its own survival. What if a similar mechanism, amplified beyond our worst nightmares, could orchestrate human hosts? Now, scale that up. Imagine a virus, a microscopic saboteur, designed to manipulate the very neurotransmitters that govern our social instincts. Viruses are masters of infiltration. They inject their genetic code, turning our cells into factories for their replication. What if part of that code was a directive, a silent command broadcast from one infected brain to another, a biological whisper network that bypassed conscious thought entirely? Scientists have already glimpsed this potential. Lab research into optogenetics, where neurons are genetically modified to respond to light, has shown astounding control over animal behavior. Shine a specific frequency of light, and a mouse runs in circles. Another frequency, and it freezes. This is precise external control over the brain's circuitry. If a pathogen could achieve even a fraction of this, internally, through chemical signals or electrical pulses, the implications are apocalyptic. Imagine a viral protein, a neuromodulator released into the bloodstream, reaching the brain and altering synaptic connections. It wouldn't need to make them intelligent, it would just need to make them responsive. Responsive to a shared signal, a biological frequency that all infected brains could interpret. A low hum in the auditory cortex, a flicker in the optic nerve, a phantom scent of prey, all originating not from the environment, but from the collective. The initial outbreak would be chaotic, a flurry of individual attacks. But as the infection spread, as more bodies joined the network, a pattern would emerge, a terrifying cohesion. The way they turn their heads in unison, the way their empty eyes track your movements with a single predatory focus. It's not a gaze, it's a shared sensor array, an aggregate of sight and sound and scent, all feeding into one central, silent calculation. What would you do now, knowing that every single infected individual is merely an antenna, a node in a vast, interconnected organism? Your hiding place, your escape route, your desperate whisper of a plan, All of it could be instantly broadcast to the collective, processed with a speed and efficiency that no human general could ever hope to match. The scratching began subtly. The true horror isn't just the loss of individual will. It's the birth of a new kind of intelligence. Not a thinking, reasoning intelligence, but a pure, unadulterated instinct for survival and propagation, amplified across 1,000,000 bodies. It's a biological supercomputer dedicated solely to its own expansion, stripping the world bare of anything not serving its grotesque purpose. How far would you go to survive against an enemy that thinks as one? The implications are chilling. Every time an infected person stumbles, every time they tear down a barrier, every time they emit that dreadful moan, it's not a random act. It's a calculated move, a piece of a grand, terrible strategy. The hive is always listening, it is always learning, and it is always advancing. The very air would become charged with an unseen dread. You wouldn't just be fighting individuals, you'd be fighting a single, monolithic entity. Their numbers aren't just strength in quantity, they are strength in processing power, in distributed awareness. A lone soldier against an entire army? Yes, but an army whose every limb is controlled by the same terrifying brain. Think of the Ophiocordyceps unilateralis fungus, the zombie ant fungus. It infects an ant, takes control of its nervous system, forces it to climb to a high vantage point, clamp down with its mandibles, and then explodes a stalk of spores from its head, raining down infection on the unsuspecting colony below. A grotesque, precise, biological directive. Our hypothetical pathogen would be doing the same, but across an entire species. The only way to fight a hive mind is to understand its network, to disrupt its communication. But how do you jam a signal that isn't broadcast through radio waves, but through shared biological chemistry? How do you sever a connection that is etched into the very cells of every living thing it touches? The scratching began subtly. The final horrifying realization washes over you. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about identity. What happens when the collective has absorbed so much, when its network spans continents, when every living thing is merely a part of its unthinking mass? Does humanity cease to exist, not with a bang, but with a silent, unified moan echoing across a desolate world? The wind howls through the shattered buildings, carrying with it the faint, rhythmic scraping. You clutch your makeshift weapon, your breath ragged, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. You know they are out there. You know they are waiting. And you know, with a sickening certainty, that they already know you are here. The hive is always listening. Subscribe to Think What If for more worlds you should never forget.